Hi there, and welcome to today's version of the Leadership Lab. Today, we are going to be talking about winning the show floor and passing along the secret to successful exhibiting. So, today I am joined with Megan Gilbert of LVE, and she is in a business development manager role where she helps clients achieve their custom exhibit dreams. So, she is joined here today with Robyn Davis, who is a trade show trainee and consultant with Exhibitors, WINH LLC. So through her company, she works with different organizations to help exhibitors and everybody feel more confident on the trade show floor. So I'm going to pass it on to Robyn and Megan, and they're going to get us started here today.
Woo! Hi, friends. So as Rachel just eloquently put, today I'm joined by Robyn Davis, who spent the last 16 plus years working within the trade show world, both directly with exhibitors and now with some of the largest show organizers in North America. She's made a career out of helping exhibitors show up smarter, feel more confident, and actually get results from the show floor, which is something we can all appreciate. Robyn, I'm so glad you're here today.
Thanks for having me, Megan. Rachel, great to see y'all again.
Heck yeah. So with that being said, why don't we just get started? I wanted to dive in on some of the not so secret secrets of how an exhibitor can utilize their time to end up successful on the trade show floor. So there's a lot of ways that we define success on the show floor. What metrics or signals do you find most meaningful?
So I like to start with two big goals for exhibitors. One is their needs goal, and that's going to be the break even point. So what do you need to accomplish in order to break even at your show and make it worth all the money and effort and everything else that you've put in? Alongside that is your wants goal, where you'll think about all the things you want to accomplish as if you were shooting for the moon in an ideal world of participating in a trade show. What would really be something that you'd be proud to say you accomplished? If you can start with those two goals, I think that's a really good starting point. And then all the other metrics and things that you'll sort out from there will support those as well. But that's really the foundation I like to start with.
That's awesome. Is there any example that you could provide from that being kind of the most meaningful out of those two goals?
Yeah, I think any trade show you go to, you should at least accomplish your needs goal. That's the base point. So if you add up your receipts, add up your invoices, I know the first year it can be a little tricky to figure out exactly how it comes through, and that's where your members come through a lot to help with the exhibitors in making those estimations. But once you go to a couple of shows, you'll sort that out a little bit better. So that's the one that I always start with. And then the part that gets you through the show really is that wants goal. So by the end of the show, you're like, oh my gosh, it's been a long week. My feet are tired, all of those things. Why are we still here? And it's your wants goal that should really pull you through. So those are both really important. But if you had to pick just one to start with, I'd start with the needs goal.
Completely understand that. And I often feel as we hope that everything kind of falls into place once we get onto the show floor. But when we're talking about this, and we normally say that optimization doesn't happen by accident, where do you tend to see exhibitors leaving things up to chance that could be more intentional?
Especially new exhibitors struggle with how they get into a trade show and kind of what is their responsibility versus someone else's responsibility. And I think that big thing that they leave to chance is often their booth traffic. They expect when they go in, they set up their booth. It's just magically everyone who they want to meet is going to appear in front of them. But we both know that's not how it works. And so, coaching, helping exhibitors to realize they need to be building momentum before the show is where I like to start with that, being more intentional.
Beautiful. So when you say that you like to kind of ramp up the intentional groundwork beforehand, how do you kind of achieve that with these exhibitors or these trade show organizers?
Yeah, so in classes I've taught before, I've had up to 10 different ways that you can generate quality booth traffic. One of my favorites that every exhibitor can do is pre-show marketing. So when you reach out to your audience before the show, you want to have a sequence that builds slowly and comfortably for your audience into what you're trying to achieve on site. So really getting to know them and valuing those relationships as you go, rather than just promoting yourself at the last minute, tends to be a bit more effective.
No, that completely makes sense. Yeah. I usually find, so what I do, I usually help exhibitors normally for the physicality portion of everything, instead of the on-site demands. So I often forget what it's like to be an exhibitor on a trade show. And I find when I go onto trade show floors, I do lean into, oh, everything's going to fall into place. Everything's going to be just fine. And usually, yes, that'll work out to your advantage, but it's not necessarily optimizing your time there and being as successful as you could be. So completely understand that, and I appreciate your insight on that.
I
So talk,
like how you say that, and I'm going to interrupt just for one
yeah,
second, because I want to come back to something you were saying that you just trust it's going to happen. And I think that's such a common thing for us to experience. And there are some things that are just going to happen and be a surprise when they get on site. And your members do a great job of helping exhibitors through that process. But I think one of the things that we can continue to reinforce throughout that planning process is that exhibitors are going to have challenges no matter how perfectly we try and make it run. Like there's going to be something weird that happens. Like this wasn't part of our plan for the session for me to interrupt you and interject with this extra tip. But sometimes those things happen. And if we're prepared for everything else, then we can really embrace those moments of opportunity and spontaneity. And I think helping exhibitors to feel more prepared in advance can give them that flexibility when they get on site.
yeah, for sure. And the confidence, because I mean, I like to see myself as, for lack of a better word, a controlling person. So I want everything to be just. I want to see the outcome be the way that I want it to eventually. I want it to basically reflect on what I planned previous, right? Which is you plan for it, but again, like you said, nothing can go perfectly, and sometimes that spontaneity and the confidence that drives it is going to get you where you need to go. So no, I love that. Thank you for let's do it. Let's but other than that, I kind of wanted to go into more of our industry. So with us as what we do is we're normally on the backside of things. So we make sure that exhibitors have what they need in terms of drayage. We ensure that their carpet gets laid, that their decorations are set into place before they come on to show. That we often overlook the planning that goes into exhibiting at a show for 3 days at a time. So knowing that it can be daunting as a first-time exhibitor, where do you tend to see the biggest gap in understanding between an industry pro and a first-time exhibitor?
Yes. So I think one of the things that exhibitors learn over time is that the logistics are supposed to be the easy part. You and your members do a great job of filling in those gaps and helping them along the way when they ask for help. But as a new exhibitor, it's so overwhelming that all they can see is I need to order carpet and I need to make sure my booth gets there on time. I need to make sure my staff has the right color t-shirts and all of these other little things that I would categorize as logistics really aren't going to be the things that move the needle in their results. And so once you've had a couple shows of experience, then you get to start thinking more about the strategy. And I would hope that more new exhibitors would have that opportunity through your advice or my advice or the industry overall, expanding the way we're empowering exhibitors to be able to pull that through sooner so they can have better results sooner too.
Completely agree. Yeah, it's one of those things that again, I haven't attended many trade shows on my own behalf. Like I've been to exhibitor, no, IMEX and Expo, and those were great opportunities. I've found some amazing leads through them. But other than that, it's kind of difficult to really understand what you should be doing, where you should be going. I know that I haven't taken advantage of what show managers have put forth. So when working with show managers, what is something that you help them target or understand through the exhibitor's eyes?
Oh, I like that question. When I work with the organizers, I try to help them see that the exhibitors are taking what they're saying very literally. So when they say, here's where you put your logo or here's where you put your company description, exhibitors expect they need to download the PNG of their logo and just re-upload it, or they expect they need to copy and paste whatever their description says somewhere else and put it into the website. But for me, they're not. The problem there is that they're not seeing it as the tool that the organizers intend it to be. organizers try to give a broad word like a logo or a description because it works for most people, but they're not really digging into the individual exhibitors and saying, here's how you're going to apply that, or here's how you're going to tweak your logo so that it's better suited for the application. Here's how we're going to rewrite your description so it's more attendee friendly. I think helping organizers put themselves in attendees' shoes and exhibitors' shoes as well can give them a better understanding of where they might want to interject and support them better.
Right. And one of our first conversations, I remember you mentioning something from an exhibitor to general contractor standpoint, which was an exhibitor goes to a show, let's say they have a 10 by 10 booth. Normally us as the general contractors, the decorators, will put that 6-foot table at the front of the booth, and it typically closes off the exhibitor from the attendees of the show. And then you've had the exhibitors come back to you and say, like, we didn't generate as many leads. We didn't get what we wanted out of the show. And you said that it essentially closed them off from them. And so it's like feng shui. You're stopping something from happening because of one physical limitation. So
Yes.
I have to bring that up because that was fantastic. I never thought of that as a general contractor.
No, and I think that's really important because I actually, when I teach exhibitors how to configure their booth so it's a welcoming space and they can flow through the booth as to having different conversations and different points, which is really what everyone wants. We want the exhibitors to use their booth space wisely. We don't want everyone in the aisle. We want them in the booths. But when the table is placed there, they think that's what it has to be. I actually had an exhibitor come back to me after going to a different trade show, and all of the other exhibitors around them told them that they didn't think they were allowed to move the table because they came in and they started getting things organized how we had discussed before, how they had been taught to do it properly. And the other booths around them were like, oh no, they put it there. It has to stay there. And fortunately, this exhibitor I had coached was confident enough to say, no, this is my plan. And I know it's allowed. I looked at the rules in advance, like all of those things. And so they were able to have a much more successful show than they would have otherwise. But I think also that peer pressure of just, this must be the way it is can be very, it's a lot for exhibitors to deal with, especially when they're new.
Yes. Sorry, there's a lot of background noise right now, so I'm trying to keep it quiet as much as I can right now. But yeah, and even as general contractors, when an exhibitor asks, and this is if anybody's in the audience, you haven't exhibited at a trade show yet, I'm sure all of you guys have because everybody here is either a rising leader or an event professional. But you can do with that furniture in that booth whatever you desire to do. Usually people, you can just put it out into the aisle and be done with it. But no, that's fantastic. So thank you for that. And then even though you can be an industry veteran, I think we tend to see the same tactics to get someone to walk over to your booth time and time again. With that being said, how would you suggest exhibitors move away from outdated traditions such as fishbowls and business cards and move them toward modern strategies?
I like the word you're using there, traditions, because it's actually, I'm writing a book for new trade show exhibitors to help them be more successful in their planning efforts. And a lot of the beginning of the book is taking these old traditions and saying, maybe they worked before for other people, or maybe they were there because of the situations of other people, but they're not necessarily the best fit for who you are and what you're trying to achieve today. And so I spend a lot of that book at the beginning kind of taking those down and saying, let's apply to your situation specifically. So I'd say the first step is to think about who you are, what you want to accomplish. We talked about goals before, but I'd also say there's 12 different types of value you can get from a trade show when you're exhibiting. And most companies only think of one or two. And so when we look at those, we also want to think about how you're going to take the people you're meeting and translate that into those different types of values. So for example, let's say you are picking something that's a little more traditional as far as your value goes. And maybe it's not sales, which would be maybe one of the most traditionals, but take a step back and call it lead progress. Lead progress is the difference between where you start when someone comes into your booth and then how you follow your sales and their buying process until they leave your booth. So how far along they've gotten, how many big steps and baby steps they make it through. So as you know those processes, you need to be able to qualify the people who come into your booth quickly and say, here's whether they're a hot, a warm, a cool, or a not lead, to be able to identify what category they fit into. So when you're moving forward through that process, you have a benchmark to determine what's happening. So I think that's one little thing you can do to really personalize your experience and pull it to a more modern place than just the tradition of showing up and counting leads or something like that instead.
For sure. And I do see that we have a question. And again, I think we failed to say this at the beginning of the panel, but if you guys have questions, please put them into the webinar chat as we go. This is a conversation between friends here, so we kind of want you guys to feel as if you can speak and ask anything at any given moment. Okay, before we go to the first question, somebody asked, what is the name of your book, Robyn?
I'm working on the title now. It needs to be decided tomorrow. But if you go to exhibitingbook.com, you can follow along on my mailing list or find me on LinkedIn. It should have a title by next week, and then it'll be into cover design and all the other steps of the process. That's the tricky part that I've been mulling over for a little while. But thank you for asking, Steve.
It's so exciting. One of the first times that I talked to Robyn, it kind of seems unrealistic to write a book, and for somebody to be writing a book. And when I'm saying unrealistic, in my eyes, it just seems so daunting. And the fact that you're actually putting in the effort to not only talk about your experiences, your expertise, but to talk about your experiences and expertise within the industry is fantastic. So I do want to commend you on all of that and your successes ahead. So
thanks, Megan. Yeah, it's a big task, a big undertaking. There are a lot of ways, like speaking here today, volunteering like y'all are doing with your group. There's a lot of ways to build your credibility. And so for me, it was like the natural next step to expand my impact. But someday I hope I'll see your name on the book cover too. It seems like you're maybe on that track as well.
It's scary. But it is really neat to be talking to everybody here today. It's fantastic to say the least. I do want to go to this other question from Gina. The other important thing is when designing the booth is accessibility and ensuring everyone can interact with your booth and staff. I love that because you really want to invite people in. Even if you have a 10 by 10, it doesn't matter. You are coming into this booth with me. You're probably going to smell my breath. It probably smells like coffee. I don't care. We're going to talk some things out. And with that being said, Robyn, is there a way that you have talked with these exhibitors in the past to be like, this is how you should, if you want to prepare for a successful event, this is what I would propose to do?
Yes, from an accessibility standpoint, I would say the first thing is to familiarize yourself with the minimum requirements, the ADA and the other rules that are available to us that we should all be complying with no matter what, as like table stakes. Like that's just something we should be doing. I think some people don't realize how important it is, but and then the second one would be to layer in other things that you know about your audience. What makes them comfortable? What makes your booth more approachable to people based on their situations? The statistic that always sticks with me is, did you know I want to say it's 1 in 12 men are colorblind or have some level of colorblindness? That's something that a lot of us don't think about when we're doing our graphics or we're doing our literature or other ways that we're engaging with people visually. And so not all disabilities and challenges are super visible to everyone. So we're just trying to make it more accessible across the board. And so thinking about the different ways that we can be more helpful and more accommodating, regardless of those specific laws, but kind of taking it to the next level is something that I always encourage exhibitors to think through.
Exactly. No, I completely get with that. I once had to design a booth that had an ADA accessible ramp with it. And it was only about 6 inches off the ground, but for every inch you have to account for a foot going off. So it was about 6 feet of a ramp. But that's just to ensure that everybody is winning within this trade show floor, whether it's the exhibitors or the attendees or the general contractor, and no matter what, you want to make sure that it's all accessible for everybody. So I appreciate you, Gina and Robyn, for talking about that. And another thing, when talking about us as people who are working alongside exhibitors and not necessarily exhibiting ourselves, when exhibiting on the trade show floor, we're normally used to install and dismantle only and not being around this many people, which can be a little daunting. But if someone is headed to a show next week, aka Exhibitor Live for a lot of people that are going and attending next week, and they only have time to change one thing about their booth staff's behavior, what should that one thing be?
Yes. So I know a lot of people hear that question and they probably jump to don't chew gum in the booth or make sure that you actually iron your shirt or something like that. But when I think about it, what I think about is that most exhibitors will jump into a trade show expecting that the sales training or the onboarding their staff had overall is going to carry through and make them successful at their trade show as well. Instead, you need trade show training. So, what's going to happen in the booth? How does that process work for you so that you can think about, for example, I know you're in Las Vegas, right, Megan?
That is correct.
There's a restaurant there, the Burger Bar. And the first time I saw the servers kind of walking over each other and around each other and supporting each other, it reminded me of the trade show floor and what we do in our booths, where you anticipate the needs of your colleagues because you know how their conversations are going to go, depending on the situation that they're in, depending on who walked up. But you're there to support them and to use your footprint properly so that they can be where they need to be and you can kind of take those hidden cues from them. So I would say training specifically focused on your exhibit staff and what they're going to be doing in your booth and how they can support one another and even just how they use their lead retrieval or whatever other system you're planning to share with them. That's something that I would really focus on in this moment to get my staff better prepared.
Right. And I think you mentioned something yesterday along the lines of, it's usually salespeople or marketing people that are within the booth themselves, talking about the things that they know and that they've talked about several different times. Is it, how do I phrase this? Is it difficult for somebody to learn trade show speak in terms of like, how do I condense this down so that I'm not losing this participant's attention? Is there a way or how do I say it? Is there a tactic that you can implement for these salespeople within the booth?
Yes, I understand what you're asking. When I started in trade shows, I was actually standing in exhibitor booths, standing and smiling and observing the process. And so I learned all of that for myself. What are the common questions people ask? How can I explain it in a way that makes sense? I know we're coming into March Madness season for anyone who's a basketball fan. And one of the things that I like to do is like almost a March Madness bracket, where you're set up and you, as the person who's leading your team, comes up with different phrases that make sense for everyone on your team to start trying. And then you experiment with them for an hour. So for example, one of the things I recommend in your booth is to do an opening question. So you'll start by saying, are you looking for, are you interested in, have you considered whatever it is that you offer to people walking by instead of just hi or nice shoes or how do you like the show, because that skips you ahead to the middle of your conversation. And when you do that, you can practice with different opening questions. And then that way, the people who come up to see you, you'll find out which ones resonate with this audience better, because every trade show is going to have different people and you just want to meet some of them. So that's one thing you can do. I think the little practice and test and trial helps a lot as well. But really, it's predicting who's coming so that you can be prepared with what they're going to need to know and kind of work through that process to edit yourself before you even start meeting them, before you start testing.
Right. And I kind of wanted to also talk about your on-site oversight and coaching teams. Can you explain a little bit about that as well?
Yes. So there's three parts of the trade show training process for me. The first one is onboarding, which happens well before the show. And then you have your full scale training and your refresher training, which you've kind of touched on a little bit of that already. But the third part is one of the most important. Your onsite and oversight is what happens during the show. So a lot of times you would leave those sales and marketing people or whoever showed up to be in your booth on their own, and you would be off doing whatever else you're responsible for or just being a part of the team. Instead, if you go through and observe your team members and continue to coach them, then you'll be able to make sure they're implementing things properly and that you're getting the result you want. So one example of how we do that is if you have your lead retrieval and everyone's scanning the leads and taking notes, you would be able to go through that to say, this person put that our visitor was a hot lead, and they said that that was because this reason, whatever it is. And a lot of times it may just be because they seemed enthusiastic. And we both know that that's not a good reason to mark someone as a hot lead. It doesn't make them a serious candidate. So instead, you would go through, you'd see the notes in the lead retrieval, and you'd pull that staffer aside and say, hey, I know you had a really positive conversation. Can we talk more about our criteria for what makes someone a hot, warm, cool, or not? Those are the categories I use. Lead in your conversation so that we can make sure we're setting ourselves up for better follow-up later. Because that's really why we categorize people, is so that we can follow up with them effectively. We can get them the right help for what they need rather than kind of starting over after the show is over. So that on-site oversight and coaching piece is where we observe the team and make sure that they're getting those habits, since most people aren't used to doing trade shows every day. It's a different kind of skill set. So we do need to continue working with them throughout the show.
Right. So like a routine-based system, even if you're not going to a show routinely, it's still one of those things. And I know when we often go to shows, we come home, we don't want to do anything when we come home. Usually post-show fatigue is real. So how can we then implement your warm, warm, hot, cool, or not, technique to maintain that momentum and the secrets that we're sharing here today? How can people take that and apply it to when they get home? Usually dealing with an abundance of those leads.
Yeah. So the most important thing you want to do after the show is make sure that you already had a plan before you left the show. So even if you're making your plan while you're at the show, ideally it would be sometime before you left for your show. You want to make sure you know how follow-up is going to work. The reason that helps you is as you're categorizing people in the booth, you can tell them what the next step's going to be. So for example, if it's a hot lead, maybe I'm planning to text message all of my hot leads after the show is over, that first day before I go home. I'm going to send everyone a text message. And so when I'm talking to people in the booth, I know they're a hot lead. I'll say, hey, don't worry, I'm going to send you a text as soon as the show is over. And then early next week, I'm going to whatever the next thing is, and start making those promises. And I don't have to write all of those down because they're part of the package. So I know that hot leads are going to have this step. So that's a little bit of the shorthand that I've already promised these things to them. If I'm promising them something that's not standard, we do want to make sure that's noted properly so that we're not ruining our reputation at the beginning. But one of the ways that different exhibitor teams can do their best work with follow-up is just by making that plan and knowing what those steps are. I like hot, warm, cool, and not because it can translate to your lead retrieval HWCN instead of ABC, which people look over your shoulder and they're like, oh, am I only a C lead? And you're like, no, it's okay. It just means something different to us. So we're trying to make sure everything's very friendly still. And so it's an easy way to code it. But that's something that you'd want to set those really clear guidelines with your team in advance as to what is a hot lead. And so they're not just writing the word hot in your, or selecting the letter H, however you have it set up in your lead retrieval. There's also questions that go with that of the different criteria that make someone your top priority after the show, or just a different level of priority for you.
Yeah, and I noticed something you said in terms of reaching out to people. You said that you would text them, and obviously there's different ways to go about this depending on who it is, who you're speaking to. Let's say if it's a very casual thing, yes, text, call would be awesome. You already established that rapport with that person, and then obviously email is a great one too to follow up. Whether it is something that you send out to a person as a email blast or what have you, or a personal reach out like, hey, it was lovely talking to you about these things, so on and so forth. Is there a good mixture as to what you should utilize when reaching out to these leads?
Yeah, so I look at several different types of ways to communicate with people. You've given a good number of those as examples already, which is great. My suggestion, though, is just to make sure you have at least 2 to 3 different types you're communicating, so you never do them back to back. So it could be text message, it could be email, it could be a LinkedIn message, it could be a direct mail package that you're physically mailing, or a postcard, something like that. There's so many different ways that you can communicate, but I wouldn't want to send 7 emails in a row. That's a little much. It feels overwhelming, but when you mix it up and you use different communication styles, each different touch point that you have, it feels like you're being attentive to their needs and you're being interesting to them. You're kind of mixing things up, keeping things creative. And also it helps the attendee to have something they resonate with. And if you notice they only reply to emails and they don't reply to phone calls, or every time you text them, they send you a LinkedIn message right back. You can start tailoring your long-term efforts to better suit their preferences. And that's something that you can learn through that follow-up process. But I do follow up all within 2 weeks after the show, and then it transitions over. And so within that 2 weeks, you should have that good mix of communications so you know what's working and you're able to. I see there's a question about pre-show outreach. And so I think of it kind of as like an up and a down. So you have the momentum in and then a slow out to ease into your post-show and long-term efforts. And so you're using the same types of communication, you're mirroring the same types of topics in a slightly different way. But either way, it's about easing in and out so it's not jarring. We never want to just send that. I don't know how many emails I have in my inbox that are like, oh, hey, I saw you at this event last week, whether or not I actually attended. And I just want to follow up and see if you want to buy my stuff. And I'm like, oh no. One, I don't know who you are because I don't remember. I met too many people. And two, that's not very helpful to me. So we want to make sure we're always focusing on the attendee side of things.
I love that. Yeah, I will say that one instance that worked with the pre-show outreach is I went to EMS. And these people from this company reached out to me via, it was like a lead retrieval system within the app that you downloaded in your phone. And you could see who was attending versus who was exhibiting. Somebody had reached out to me and said, come by our booth. And they only had a 10 by 10, but their presence was so strong. Speak about the table off to the side. They were handing out liquid desks for refreshments. And then on top of that, they were interviewing people within a Lamborghini Urus on the strip. And I happily got into that car. Scary. My mom never tells me, or always tells me to never get into a stranger's car. But I happily got into that car. We talked about industry insights within 15 minutes of us driving around. It was a full interview. It was so fun. And that is the only time I have been reached out pre-show, and it worked phenomenally. Now, will I do that again? Probably not. I was very happy to be in a Lamborghini and it was very fun, but it was one of those moments where they knew what they were doing and they successfully nailed it. So that was a good question, Natalie. Awesome. So I do have one last question, but before we get into that question, I want to see if anybody in our audience has any other questions for Robyn or I. We are here for you guys. So not a problem. If you guys want to just send them out whenever you would like, that'd be awesome. We do have about, I can't do math, 13 more minutes with you guys today. All right. So I did want to ask this last question, Robyn, because I think all of us can gain some insight from it. What is a successful show floor tactic that is actually actually hurting exhibitors in today's environment?
So one of the things I think about is when I was getting started in this industry, way back when, it was just after everyone else was getting off of these big screen TVs and vacations and other things that they were gifting to people. Like that was their swag at healthcare events way back when. There's laws now that prevent that. I actually have a TV that I won standing and working in a trade show booth next to another company at a technology trade show really early in my career. And so those types of things feel like you're supposed to do them. You're supposed to go and buy swag. You're supposed to go and have these big giveaways. It's something a lot of companies do, even if they're not planning to do something big. One of the things people put on their checklist is, can I get branded pens? Can I get a bowl of candy? All of that. And in my experience, those aren't necessarily things that are going to help you be more successful, especially if you're a smaller business or the audience you're trying to connect with at your show is a smaller segment of the overall audience. You don't want everyone to stop at your booth. You want the right people to stop at your booth. So I have this thing I call the Robyn Davis test. Because I generally work with exhibitors in different types of industries. And the way it works is when you're thinking about your booth attraction or your giveaway, if it's something that I, Robyn Davis, would want and be happy to stand in line for, it's probably not the right thing for you to be giving away because I can't buy from you. So like I said, I won that big screen TV. I've stood in line before to get a toy truck for my nephew. I can't buy a real truck for you, so that's maybe not the best option, even though it relates to what you're doing. It's just something anyone would want. So I would be really mindful of what you're just looking at everyone else doing and adapting that to you. It kind of goes back to those traditions we were talking about before. They may not be the right fit. And so I think there is a place for that. There is a framework, and I have a few different criteria I put in my book about how you can choose attractions that do make sense for you. And sometimes swag and giveaways are the right thing, but it has to be the right kind and the right application, not just, oh, everyone gets pens or everyone gets patches or everyone gets whatever it is at your show. So I'm going to do that too. We really want to make sure that it's specific to who you are and who you're helping.
Right. Sometimes what works at CES won't work at SHOT Show. So it is one of those things that be mindful of who you're servicing, also who you are and what you would like. So that's awesome. I think all of us can benefit from applying the Robyn Davis test. There are some fun questions. We have a question from Max. Ways to pull people into inline booths that don't make you look like a stalker. Listen, I feel like we all have a moment where we're like, okay, I'm just walking along these booths. Who's gonna stop me? Who am I gonna go for? Do you have any ways to answer that, Robyn?
Yes, I think the first thing to do is to think back to where we were talking before about like pre-show marketing or writing your company description so that people will be coming to you instead of you having to pull everyone in. Next, when you think about your opening question that I shared before, it's very not judgy, not pushy. Are you looking for this? Are you interested in this? Either they are or they aren't, but you're giving them a chance to make that choice for themselves. And then you've got your booth design. Your booth design should tell them kind of like that big sign in the mall or now at the airport. I don't know how many people go to malls anymore, but when you go to the airport, you're looking at the terminal map and you're like, where do I find coffee or whatever you need before you get on your flight? Where's the closest place? Then you say, oh, I'm right here. That's what you want your booth design to say. Attendees, you are right here. Either you're in the right place or the wrong place, but at least you get to make that decision. So like I said, there's lots of different ways that you can get people to feel like they're in the right place or the wrong place. And so they don't spend too much time with you. It's just about deciding what works and also having that feeling, Max. If you're being pushy, if you're being forceful when people are walking by because someone told you you were supposed to, just like pull everyone in the booth and you have this energy about you that feels off-putting to you even, that's not going to go as well with attendees. And you already know that likely. So hopefully you're not doing that. But having that like calm, quiet confidence of, you know, what I'm offering is important and valuable to this audience. That's why I'm at this trade show. And so the people it does resonate with, they're going to want to know about this. And so just finding a way to connect with them as humans is a great starting point, and kind of changing your vibe as to how you communicate with them will help that to be a more productive starting point and not feel as awkward.
Right. Yeah. I have found myself walking along booths before and just looking everybody into their eyes to acknowledge that I see them and that I know that they're there. But sometimes I don't want to because I'll see it and I go, okay, I have no interest in what they're selling or what they're talking about. It does not apply to me, but I still want you to know that I think you did a good job. So I'll do like a little nod to them, you know, but it sometimes is, he said, so more Walmart greeter than New York street vendor. Got it. Thanks.
Yeah, if they need help, they'll ask you if you're the right fit and they're already focused on something else and they say no in the minute because they're like, oh, I've got to get to this, whatever. They'll come back. If they're the right person, they'll want to talk to you. And so I think having that can take a little bit of the pressure off of both you and them, but not every exhibitor can, it's hard the first couple of times you do it. It's just not as natural for most of us. And so it's something you have to practice to get into that mindset.
I love it. Thank you for your insight, Robyn. And then we do have another question from Rachel. Where do you feel exhibitors are losing the most time or missing opportunities on show floor today?
One thing that I would say for that is a lot of times exhibitors feel like they're booth duty or they're not booth duty. Like it's this very yes or no kind of thing for exhibitors. And it's great when you're in your booth and you're on and you're doing a great job, but the entire rest of your experience at a trade show is also an opportunity for you. So whenever you leave your house or your office to get on a plane or drive in a car or whatever it is to get where you're going, all the way till you get back home, you're likely to run into people who are doing things with your trade show, who are in your industry. And even if you have a small show, so it's not everyone who's on the way to come and kind of take over the city, but it's just a handful of people, even practicing and kind of getting yourself in the momentum of talking to random people you meet and smiling and being a part of what's going on around you, soaking in the news and the activities and things that are available will make you a better conversationalist when you get on site. You'll have more to talk to and talk about. So I would say what they're missing the most is the rest of the show. Another example would be when you go to a reception with your colleagues and as a team, you're wearing your team polos and you're gonna go stand there and have drinks for an hour and meet people, but you're actually just talking to each other, waiting for people to come to you. That's not really a very productive approach. So when you go anywhere with your colleagues, I would, you can walk over together, and ideally you'd be walking over with prospects or other people you want to meet at the show, industry friends. That's a great in-between time to maximize and make more use of what you're doing. But once you get somewhere, split up. You can talk to your colleagues anytime. You don't need to talk to them at a reception. Talk to other people, come back and check in, and split up again. But when you're out there doing those things, that's a big missed opportunity to not be taking advantage and just be looking at your phone or whatever else. Always be eyes up, attentive to the room and the situation around you so that you can immerse yourself in it and have a better opportunity to take advantage of the spontaneity that is there.
I love it. You actually said everything on the nose. It's a matter of kind of seeking discomfort and realizing that, yes, this may be uncomfortable, but I'm only going to be in this moment for a little bit. And the worst that can happen is I don't appreciate the conversation, but guess what? You put yourself in that position to actually learn from somebody, listen to another person speak, and you get to decide whether or not you want to continue forth with it. But above all else is just kind of being more humanistic in our approach and understanding that we're all going through this life together. And the best thing that we can do is learn from each other. So I do like that.
And if I can add one more thing to what you just said there, I think that was a great thought of looking at people you're meeting who may not be the right fit for you. Maybe they're the right fit for someone else you meet. And so if you acknowledge them and you understand them and you're leaving a positive impression, whether it ends up that maybe they're at a different company down the line and that company needs you, or just they're out making friends at these events too. And so they'd be happy to introduce you to someone they meet, or you meet more people and you can't do anything to help them right away, but you want to be a resource for them, you can introduce to someone else you met. I was at an exhibitor meeting where the organizer hosts and you go and speaking and meet all the vendors and things in advance a few weeks ago. And they had a panel of exhibitors who were on stage talking about some of the things that they're interested in, and attendees who were talking about what they get out of trade shows. And one of the things they said is because their industry has such long sales cycles, it helps them more to feel like they can trust you and have you be their point of contact within the industry. So they're looking to exhibitors to be their resource, to connect them to other exhibitors and other attendees that are going to be beneficial to them in the meantime. So maybe they will consider your product or service when it makes sense for their company. But until then, you still have an opportunity to demonstrate how great you are by being the connector and being the center of their participation at the show. So I like how you brought that up, Megan. I think that's a great tip for people in this call and elsewhere to be thinking about who they're meeting so that they can remember and maybe pass that along, even if it's not the right fit for you.
Exactly. And you explain basically without talking about this industry, you explain this industry to a T, because that's kind of how we all operate. Is although we may all find different paths, we're all still linear in where we're going. And no matter what, everybody's a friend of a friend of a friend. And being that person that is reliable, dependable, somebody who's going to be there with a smile and help you throughout anything, that's the kind of person you want to lean on. So no, you said it so eloquently, and I think that was a perfect way to wrap this up. If anybody has anything else to ask, we do have a couple more minutes here. I just want to thank Robyn for being here today. Seriously, you have said things that have opened my eyes, and I hope have opened up the attendees' eyes here today too. Just thank you for your insight on everything. It's been awesome.
Thank you, Megan. You've been a pleasure to work with. I appreciate your diligence in preparing and bringing my attention to some things that y'all are interested in and curious about that I might not have thought of otherwise. It's always been fun to hear how different people say things within our industry. And I think that really brings us all closer together when we can start to understand each other's language, since we each bring such a great, wonderful, different perspective to what we're doing. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, Megan and Robyn. We really enjoyed having you here today. It was such a great session. I know I learned a lot. I'm sure everybody on this call learned a lot, and we're all going to be able to take to the trade show floor and learn how to better optimize our booth sales and our exhibiting presence at our next trade show. I just wanted to say thank you again for everyone who joined us today. And encourage you all to stay connected with ESCA on esca.org, on LinkedIn, through our newsletter, just for more key updates on Leadership Labs to come. And if you have any Leadership Lab topics that you want to see featured during these monthly webinars, please feel free to send those over. We're always looking for content, and we want to make sure it's relevant for you in the audience. So thank you, Robyn and Megan, again.
Woo! Thank you guys. I hope everybody has an amazing day.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.